We are kicking off a learning series. We actually kicked off a learning series yesterday, and we are going to be having many more in the coming days and the following week as well. I'm sure you have updates about that, and we will be giving you more details about the sessions that are coming up. But before we get started on today's session, we'll just quickly walk you through what NSRCEL is all about for those of you who are probably interacting with us for the first time. Just give me a second while I share my screen for all of us. All right, so we are the startup incubator at IIM Bangalore. We've been in the ecosystem for about 2 decades now. While we might be part of the institute, the incubator is open to everyone. So if you are a founder, if you're thinking about starting up, you should definitely talk to us, right? In terms of what we do, like I said, we are the incubator that brings together the ecosystem that we've built in the last 2 decades. We bring together academia, VCs, and really build a safe space for founders to test out their ideas. So far, we've encouraged entrepreneurship for, like I said, for over 2 decades now, and we've impacted several thousand startups. Many of them you might have already interacted with, or you may have been touched by the impact that they do. For example, if you've heard of Millup is one of our startups. We've also got several startups that have gone on to do some amazing things in various sectors. We typically work with broadly two kinds of entrepreneurs. We have several programs, but just in the interest of time, what we would like you to take away from this is for you to know the kind of founders we work with, right? Most of our founders are either in the early stage. Those are people who are in the ideation phase. They've got an MVP, just about thinking of like getting their first customer. So they're fairly early in the game. The second category of founders are founders who have some traction. These are people who have early paying customers. They've probably figured out their market, but they really want to scale and grow in the right way, right? In terms of the founders that we have, we work with them as part of various programs that we have. And if you go over to our website, nsrcel.org, you'll get a sense of what programs are open. Currently, we are open for applications for a couple of them. Launchpad is one of them. So this is the early ideation stage focused program. We are also open to Velocity, which is for those who are in post-revenue growth stage. These are sector agnostic and they happen every couple of months. So if you think you're not ready at the current stage, but you want to maybe think about it in a couple of months, you can definitely go and apply to it. So these programs happen every few months and you can sign up as and when you think you are ready for it. We are also open for applications for the Goldman Sachs 10,000 Women program. So this is a program for women entrepreneurs who have a business of 35 lakhs per annum and above. This is also sector agnostic, but this is very scale up focused. So people are on campus for 3 weeks over a 3-month period. So you are on campus for a week and the rest of the month you are focused on really applying what you're learning on campus. And these are some of the programs that we have. If you have any questions, you can drop them in the Q&A section and we'll be happy to kind of pick them up as well. These are some of the partners that we have as part of the NSRCEL Startup Kit. So this is a toolkit that we built for the founders in our ecosystem, Microsoft for Startups being one of them. And these are some of the tools that some of our founders get access to through NSRCEL. Without further ado, I'll hand it over to Shweta. Shweta is the Director of Product Marketing Analytics and AI at Microsoft. And she is a seasoned architect and data science professional with over 20 years of experience. And I'm definitely looking forward to the session that we're going to kick off in a bit. For any questions, we recommend you drop them in the Q&A section and we'll curate the questions for Shweta at the end. Over to you, Shweta.
All right, thank you, Shloka. Let me quickly go ahead and share my screen. Okay. Is there a way to show all windows?
You're able to share it, right?
Just trying to figure out, we don't use Zoom, right?
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
I think I'll have issue later on, but for now, let me share this.
It's a green option.
Okay. So I hope you're able to see.
Yeah, you might just have to go in slideshow mode.
Yeah, sure. Okay. All right. Thank you, everybody. Glad to be here. My name is Shweta. I lead the Analytics and AI Charter for Microsoft India. Let's quickly get started. So before I get started, this is the first thing that I have started sharing with the customers and startups alike, that Microsoft Cloud runs on trust. Trust is core to what we do. And when we say trust, it is all about, your data. Customer data is customer data. It is not used for anything apart from customer's own scenario. We do not take that data and use it to, further train the foundational models, whether our own models or OpenAI. We are completely segregated from, the deployments are completely segregated. Your deployment stays in your tenant and the data is encrypted and all the compliance that you can see there. So in nutshell, I think this is core to everything that we do. And that's the reason, we have a strong, a very, very strong ecosystem when it comes to partners also who come and build with us. And that's precisely the reason, why OpenAI has partnered with us. So to quickly talk about the, kind of growth ChatGPT in itself has seen, this shows you if mobile phone took 16 years for it, the adoption to reach 100 million users, Facebook 4.5 years, ChatGPT literally took just about 2 months to get to 100 million mark. And that is really the kind of hype that we're talking about this, but then this is not just hype, this is very, very real, because we are really seeing the kind of scenarios that customers are building. And honestly, this is the first step towards AGI, given before this, it was very narrow, while AI is not new, it's been there for last almost 70 plus years. But all of that was very narrow AI. When I say narrow AI, so like if there was a text language model or a text analytics model, there was one model which could only do, let's say, sentiment analytics. For named entity extraction, there was another model. Likewise, for summarization, there is something else like Spacey, etc. Right? So they all do a good job on one very, very narrow domain, which means that every organization, every startup has to pretty much start from ground up. And that's actually a lot of skill, a lot of compute, and overall the landscape becomes very, very difficult. So what OpenAI as mission and vision is really to solve for AGI, and the way they are looking at it, rather the whole of industry is looking now, is building the foundation model on the transformer architecture. This transformation, foundation model, the idea being that one, you can bring in different kind of data sources. The earlier generation models could only deal with one kind of data source at a time. So image could only deal with image data. Text models could only deal with text data. But going forward, I think we will start seeing multiple kind of data sourcing being fed into training the foundation model. And then the same foundation model, let's say if it is text-based models like GPT-3 or GPT models, they are able to do multiple tasks like Q&A, like sentiment analytics, like summarization, and following the instruction, or even reasoning. So that's really the idea. Now, the reason, while of course OpenAI's mission is to solve for AGI, Microsoft vision is to empower every person and organization to achieve more. And the two organizations have come together, and the core of that is Azure AI infrastructure, because to build a model like GPT-3 and GPT-4, which has billions, GPT-3 has 175 billion parameters. But to be able to build and run that reliably, there is a purpose-built infrastructure which goes, and that infrastructure is clusters of GPUs connected through InfiniBand. And it is the same infrastructure that is used by us for training our own, pre-trained AI models, like cognitive services, and literally the kind of research which has been done in the last 30, 40 years at Microsoft Research. That's what has come in and helped us build that, the AI platform and the required infrastructure for that. And that's really what OpenAI uses today to train those models. As I said, this is purpose built, but also the reliability that is required to build and scale for such large AI models is kind of, this is the proven performance that we have been using for many years. Now, in terms of capabilities, as I said, these are foundation models. These are pre-trained, and they can even the pre-trained models can do great job of these broad categories that you see here. They are great at writing as writing assistants. They can create content like media agencies. They can create media content, automated social media handles could be automated. Let's say email campaigns could be created using this, blogs can be written, all of that. And we are seeing that across the industry, every scenario is getting, customers are exploring and building along, very, very innovative ways. You can reason over structured and unstructured data. Structured data, you can bring in, let's say, tabular data, like if there is an annual report which has tables, that data itself, you can actually ask questions, say that, hey, summarize this data as 5-point summary, and you will get the results. The example of this you can actually see in Bing search or in Edge browser. In both those, if you, let's say, if you're on moneycontrol.com and you go to a particular stock symbol, you're looking at, let's say, Infosys, and while you are on that script page in Money Control, you can use the Bing plugin that is now integrated with Edge browser and say, hey, analyze this data, and it'll do that and give you a nice summary of that. Summarization, like I said, it could be Q&A, it could be feedback. I think feedback in all of the user-generated content, you could actually use that and get themes out of that feedback. And of course, the chatbot and virtual agents, etc. Now, this is a very horizontal, as you can see, right? Scenarios. Every industry has applicability across all of these. So while pre-trained models do a great job in some scenarios, which is may not be more than 5%, there is a provision to also train custom models, where you are, what you're doing is you're taking the base model and you're bringing in your own data, which is annotated as input and output pairs, like we do in supervised learning. You're doing that, and you're using a base model, and you're just doing a fine tuning or adjusting the weights through transfer learning. So that is also possible. Having said that, 90 to 95% of the scenarios can be solved without, just using the foundational model and changing what we call prompt, or basically doing prompt engineering. So how does it really differ from what runs on OpenAI? As I said, it is this models as they are on OpenAI are the same models which run on Azure OpenAI. There is absolutely no difference. GPT-3, 3.5, Chat GPT Turbo 3.5, GPT-4 likewise are available, and future models as they will get developed will come to Azure. But what is really the difference? There are two differentiations which are very, very critical. One is a whole of security and safety that is built in. So from safety perspective, we are a strong proponent of responsible AI, which means the AI usage itself should be responsible. So there is the ability to filter by default, there is a content filter and abuse monitoring that takes place on the content. So that's built into the service as a layer on top of the Azure OpenAI model. So that's one. The second is around security. So as I said, like your data is your data. It is deployed inside your virtual network. It can be only accessible through private IP. The data is encrypted. You can encrypt with your own key. There is role-based access control, so you can give fine-grained, access to different people, like who can do what. So contributors can, go ahead, train a model, deploy, and do all of that. Whereas reader can only use the API to actually do inferencing. So this is one reason. The second is the whole of reliability or availability. So we give 99.939 SLAs on the service availability. Okay. Now, as this is part of broader Azure AI portfolio, Azure AI portfolio of services as a platform is what we call it. The foundation is Azure Machine Learning, and Azure Machine Learning is a platform to build your own custom ML models. This is what we use internally to train our cognitive services, like what you see here on the second layer: vision, speech, language, etc. OpenAI is also part of this stack, and they also use Azure Machine Learning to train these large-scale models. So the capabilities in vision are around, let's say OCR, detecting objects, recognition. Face API also is there, which can do face detection, face matching, all of that. Speech to text, text to speech, neural TTS capabilities are present in speech. For Indian languages, we have support for about 10 to 12 Indian regional languages. Language services alone have capability to do many things, including, let's say, translations, summarization, named entity extraction. So you really don't need to use OpenAI for everything. Use it for those complex tasks. Sometimes it may be more economical to use, let's say, language or translation from the other services. And on top of these point solutions, point services, we have the scenario-based, or what we call applied AI services, which are built on top of the foundational services, like a form recognizer, which can extract unstructured and structured information from, let's say, documents. So you may have unstructured data, which is all that, but you may have forms in which there is some layout and content. So layout and content together brings the structure, which we can, extract and then digitize, basically digitize that, use it, index it, bring insights out of that on top of, form recognizer. If there is a table, you can bring the table out, and then on top of the table, you can apply OpenAI to, further, let's say, summarize that table for you. So a whole solution could be stitched using multiple of these capabilities. Like if it is a call center scenario, which is, call center analytics or contact center automation, customers are very, very keen today to, solve it using OpenAI, but then OpenAI is one part of the problem. The speech part is still will require speech. So integration with the telephony systems, and then transcription using the speech service, and then eventually using either a language or OpenAI service. And now we have gone and integrated Azure OpenAI as part of other platforms also, like it is coming in Power BI. It is already there in the low-code, no-code platform, which is Power Apps, Power Automate, Power Virtual Agent, and Microsoft 365, etc. Now, ChatGPT, think of ChatGPT as a service. When basically you're building a conversational agent, but you need to have guardrails, because if you just go and use ChatGPT, which is the free one available on OpenAI, there are no boundaries. You can ask anything, and while they have built some guardrails, but it is fairly, you can jailbreak easily. While GPT-4 itself has become much better. So what you can do is, when you're setting up these assistants, you can actually define that boundary through the prompt. So here is an example. You are a geo support agent. So you're saying what is the persona, what you are supposed to do, and how should you be responding, what should be the tonality, like you're friendly and concise, provide short responses. You should say, depending upon the scenario, that you can only provide factual answers. So you are controlling that, hey, it should not hallucinate. So these are the ways to control that. And you say, do not provide answers that are not related to geo, nothing outside of this boundary. Do not respond if anybody asks about compete or comparison with other service providers. And basically saying, do not answer anything outside of this. So this is a way to define persona, tonality, as well as boundary for, what it should and should not respond. And when you're building a chat, agent, you can use the chat API. There is a system message in. So this is what will go into the system message. So here is an example of the same what I said as a prompt being set up. So here, asking hello, and you get a response. How may I assist you regarding Geo services? So I asked about fiber offer. Geo fiber it went and of course responded. Now at this point, this is just trained on public data, which is all of let's say Wikipedia, digitized books, news articles, blog, and of course corporate websites. All the corporate websites have been used, and through all of this content, it is able to respond without doing anything specifically on geo geo services or geo fiber. Now the moment I say, can you compare this with Airtel, you can see that response says, I apologize, I'm not supposed to talk about anything apart from I really do not have information. I cannot provide a comparison. So this is the way you steer your bot towards a specific scenario. Now that was ChatGPT, but the way this whole of era is the era of AI is what we call it is each and every persona is going to have a co-pilot. So here is a co-pilot for programmers or the developers, and that is GitHub Copilot. So here you are going to be writing just English prompts, and the code will get generated. Now this code can be anything for your language of choice. Could be Python, Scala. It could be you could write machine learning model code itself for training a model. All of that is possible, and this is already as a pre-built capability integrated inside GitHub Copilot. Now this is the kind of results or ROI, if I can call that, is what we are hearing from customers, that 46% of the new code is now written by AI in these organizations who have adopted that. Overall, there are 50+% developer productivity, and of course, because of focusing on the quality code and the quality, they feel a lot more satisfied, because they are now looking at not solving the trivial things like probably, if I had to say, like writing the ML, the code to train a model. It's no big deal. It is about that feature engineering, which makes data scientists a lot more interested. It is about doing that exploratory analysis, right? And not really writing that mundane code. So that's where I think a balance of productivity and creativity also comes together. As I said, we are integrating it across the suite of product, and you can see there's a security copilot, there is Power BI copilot, there is M365, Power Dynamics, etc. But the space for you as a startup is really building the copilot for your audience or your intended user for the platform. It could be for a doctor, it could be for a lawyer, it could be for the financial analyst, and the list just continues, right? Now here is the 4 broad categories of models that exist. GPT is the text-based model, the text in, text out, and I'll show you the scenario, demo. Codex is code-based API, which rather API where you give text prompt and you can generate code, or you give code and ask it to explain the code, and it can be very helpful in the legacy situation, legacy code. You can generate test scripts, DALI for generating images from the text prompts, and ChatGPT is a specific application of GPT, which has been optimized for short conversations and maintaining that context over the conversation. And here is an example of each one of those, like GPT-3. If I give a prompt, write a tagline for an ice cream shop, this is the response. DALI, you can see this image of the cat got generated. Now, the best, the fact is that this particular cat actually does not exist on internet anywhere. It's a generated model, okay? So because of that, what you will see that, it will not be a perfect image. It will not be, at least as of today, it will not be a high definition image. It is more towards the art than towards a picture. But great for, let's say scenarios like when you are looking to create brochures, looking to create artistic visuals, I think this is a great place to start. And likewise for content generation, etc., for anything which requires creativity, if people start using this, I think a lot of us who do not have that muscle can also start working on creating, like, let's say, campaigns, like creating marketing material, right? So that's where I think the platform really makes it easy for anybody to use. Okay, let's look at what are chat GPT benefits. So one is that in GPT, you just GPT model 3, 4, etc. You give input and you get a response back. You of course control by defining your prompt in a certain way. But chat GPT is meant for conversational this one. So this is multi-turn. You can actually have a conversation back and forth, and it will retain that context. So it's been built for the chat scenario, right? So here is what I was earlier telling you about steerability, which has to be defined by you. Okay, like if there is a fashion consultant, so there is a persona and there is what it can and cannot do, and that is your job. If you are going to build a virtual agent, it is your job to define that. And that is your job as a responsible, developer as well. And how do you really control what it can or cannot do, or reduce hallucinations? These are certain techniques to do that. One is what you should include as an instruction, that requesting the model not to make up stuff but stay with facts. Restrict from, you can say that limited to only these categories. So restrict yours, let's say, email classification to these categories. Adding you can ask it to add a chain of thought, like solve the problem step by step so that it does not hallucinate. If you do not give that, sometimes there is a likelihood that it will go and just generate a random answer, because it is just generating, right? That's precisely it is doing. So it can get very, very creative. You can control that by also controlling a parameter called temperature. I'll show you that. Now, also, where something which is very important, you can say that repeat that multiple times while you're defining the prompt, and also the position. So anything which is towards the end in your instruction set becomes a lot more important than something which was defined upfront. What are the use cases? Really anything around natural language you can think of using Azure OpenAI as a or large language models for solving that. Also, some things that did not exist before this, right? Like enterprise search. People thought enterprise search is only search. Now you can make it conversational search, which means you, instead of doing just a search query, you can change that completely to a chat-based conversation with the search engine or with the agent. Okay, so these are some examples of using those capabilities across. Like I said, customer, automated customer service or contact center. It could be for IVR bot automation. You can make it more intelligent. Instead of saying press 1 for this, press 2 for this, you can actually make it respond to user queries, because now it understands all of that. You can integrate it with the backend system, let's say through or some orchestration engine like LangChain or something. But once it gets the response, then it can give a very contextualized and personalized response to the customer, right? You can use it for agent assist. You can give the right prompts to the agent who is, who's right now responding to the customer, and give him cues. You can use it for document processing or automation or knowledge mining of all the documents that exist. Summarization could be used for, let's say, research around large documents, so using summarization or bringing insights out of those documents. Now, that document could be a market research documents, it could be financial reports, it could be anything which is really unstructured in nature and long content. You can make the user basically think of building such platforms as you're building a co-pilot for. They are only, this platform is only a co-pilot, it is not a pilot, and that should be the way to look at adoption of this technology, that while it is very, very powerful, think of, making the user more productive through this. It's not a decision making system, this is a decision assistive system. Okay, so if here is an example of media, right? If there is content or live news, on top of that, if people are responding, you can do a content analysis of that. As you keep reading, there are, let's say, people tweeting on a certain hashtag, you can do live analysis of that, and automatically also generate content, summarize all of that, and use that. Here is an example for a retail scenario or an e-commerce scenario. So if there is a product database of images, you can actually enable image-based search using this, because you could convert your, basically you can find other similar looking content, and that content either be a document or an image, because all you're going to do is take that content and convert it to a vector embedding and put it into a vector database, and then find other similar n nearest neighbors to that particular input image. Now let's look at what is there in terms of technology. So GPT-3.4 have these models, different models as they go from Ada, Babbage, Curie to Da Vinci become more advanced. And while A, B, C have the limit of the number of words or tokens that it can take in and generate is about 2000. Da Vinci is more advanced, it can take up to 4000. But GPT-3 to 4 itself, Da Vinci model has become a lot more advanced, because the number of parameters that it understands is more, and also the limit on the input and output, the prompts and completion is also different. As I said, it works on, the words are further broken down into token, and token is really the smallest form factor or the building block for this. And using the tokens, you can, the limit is actually on those tokens, which is both input and output. Now, how does it really generate the, text or sequence? Is, of course, the probabilistic, just like any other, machine learning model. So it determines the probability of having the next word as, let's say, animal in this case, or something else. It will check, go through those probabilistic model and generate that. There is, as I said, there is a parameter called temperature, which actually gives you a way to make it more deterministic if you keep the temperature to 0, versus 1, which increases the randomness or the ad hocness of the response. So if you want to stay factual and not change the response, you can set the temperature to 0. If you want it to be creative, like writing articles or blogs, or let's say creating campaigns, temperature could be towards higher side. Okay, I think this is one important aspect, which is embedding. So what really so people who have already worked with, let's say, word2vec, BERT, etc., know that this is a way to convert your large documents as vectors, and vectors are the vectors are n-dimensional, and you are representing multiple documents as as embeddings in that multidimensional space, as vectors in multidimensional space. And then you find other similar or relevant similar looking documents or vectors around that space to use it. Where can you use it? You can use it for text search, you can use it for code search, you could use it for let's say job description to a resume mapping. You could use it for, as I was talking about, the enterprise search or any search on a knowledge repository. Or for user query, you could find the most relevant documents, which are not just based on keywords, but based on this embedding and similarity search. Okay, So this is what you would be doing in that case, that user input. If first you would take your knowledge base and convert all of those to embeddings and load it into a vector database or some kind of index. But when the user's query comes, first you will convert that to embedding, and then you will do a similarity search in that space using a OpenAI API. Okay, this is, let me not spend time on this. Now, really, how do you get started? Important question. What you do is you ideate on, what is your data, what is your scenario, and then experiment with that scenario. How you do it is you create, you go to Azure OpenAI Studio. It's basically the playground. You start with prompts, and in that prompt, for example, here you can say summarize game commentary into highlights, and you've given some content. In this case, you're saying summarize and what are the main highlights of the game so far. It generated some response. This is an example of zero-shot learning, where you're just giving instructions, not really giving any sample to learn from. And the base model, given that it already understands all the domains, it does well. Then if for certain scenarios like ticket classification or email classification into different categories based on if it is a customer support service, emails coming for that, you can give some examples and define the list of categories, and then give some examples of that hey, if commentary, if the input is like this, the output should be like this, right? So commentary, let's say Turner is so important defensive here, highlight that gets generated is like this. So that's this is the input and this is the output or results, and you give a prompt. Once you do this, this is called learning in context of that situation or that particular prompt. This is not really fine tuning or changing any weights. It is just learning on the go through that context. It's called few shot learning. And even if that does not work, that's when you go towards fine tuning. Now, fine tuning is where you actually bring your data and create input output pair, as I was saying, and that is your training data, and you adjust the weight. But most of the scenarios you should be able to solve using a zero shot and few shot to significant extent, as well as using a model which is retrieval augmented generation. If not, yes, fine tuning, this is what you do. You start with a base model, you bring your data, and then you customize the model, which you can do either from the studio or you can do that using APIs as well. Okay, now let me quickly move to can you confirm if you're able to see my browser window?
Hey, we can see the PPT.
PPT only. Okay, 1 second. Are you able to see now the browser window?
Yes.
Okay.
I see Azure AI Studio.
Yes. So here is the Azure AI Studio or the playground. I am going to be showing you quickly few scenarios, and I am using only the pre-built models. Okay. Here is a call center conversation and the script of that. So a customer called reporting a car accident and he wanted to report that, and he says, customer says that I just had a car accident and I will report it. Agent says, I hope you're all right, in safe place to have this conversation. Customer says, yes, I'm fine, and then I have details where the accident happened, what was the car, were there any injuries, policy numbers, etc. All the conversation happens. So this is a multi-turn conversation. Now, in this, whether I want to do this in real time or post facto, I mean, the response will not change. It's just a way how you will build the workflow. But if I'm looking for extracting the key aspects of that conversation, let's say I ask this, What was the main reason of conversation? Sentiment of the customer. How did the agent handle the conversation? Create a short summary. Rate agent's response. All of that. Look at the responses that it has generated. The beauty is that it is doing that without me training it to do anything specifically on this particular scenario, which is the call center for insurance company. And I'm not telling it how to extract or generate the response. This is an example of zero-shot learning. So you can see it's amazing in terms of the kind of response it is given, including the final question, which is rate the agent's response on a scale of 1 to 10. And typically this is an example rating, right? It is an example of supervised learning where you will give some sample and it will do that. Here it just knows and it says, hey, I would like to, rate it 9 on 10. And here is my reason. That he was professional, patient, understanding while gathering all of that and provided the customer with the best solution. So you start with exploring the scenario. Okay. Now I have given this. This is this whole thing is called prompt. Now this is instruction, and these are what you're looking for. Okay, information that you're looking for. So this whole thing is called prompt, and the response that gets generated is completion. And the basic building block is tokens, which is also your limit on a specific model. That is also how the commercial pricing, etc. works. There are some pre-built scenarios you can also explore that to get started. Like let's say I could say generate product name ideas. Okay. If I max token risk, you can limit the number of tokens that you want to generate. Let's say generate product name ideas for yet to be launched wearable health device. And now I'm giving it some examples. So this is few short learning. These are the seed words and example product names. This, let's look at ideas. Okay, let's see what it generates. So it says health dash. Given these are the seed words: quick health, wellness link, fit compass, fit link. But you can see basically it's just going and generating new content basis the instruction set that you have given. Here is similar to first one. Let me move actually. Here is an example of how you could use this for changing the experience for your end customer. Here is basically we're generating a product description on a website or let's say e-commerce site listing page. It is Hyundai Creta. It has you have the car information. What you're basically doing is, given this description, create a dynamic listing or dynamic content targeting a specific car shopper, given you would know about the persona of that. So basically I'm saying that, hey, if you're generating this product description for a family and of 2 kids and 1 dog, how would you generate it versus, so this is how it is generating for, let's say, family of 4. And if I say car shopper who is elderly, it will do differently. Okay, so I'm going to delete this now and I'm going to generate it. Let's see what it says. So you can see, right, it has completely changed that. Okay, moving on. Okay, I am struggling with how do I okay, I can't seem to figure out.
Shweta, I think you'll just have to click on stop share, and if you want to switch.
No, I don't want to stop share. I just want it to, hide this panel.
Okay.
Because I want to go to, okay, fine.
The 3 dots on the right, I think if you right click on them, you should be able to see an option that says hide panel.
Hide floating meeting controls. Thank you.
Yes, anytime.
Yeah, that's what happens when you don't use a technology. It should have a co-pilot built in. Okay, so here is a classic example of, and this is a very innovative use of the technology, by the way. This is an output of there was a whiteboarding that I did with some customers. I used the computer vision API to extract the content using that read or OCR content. And given I was doing handwrite, basically whiteboarding, right? It brought out the content. It was pretty good, but then you can see that, hey, there is no space, etc. in this. Okay, and it says something, don't know what it is. Okay, so that the gaps are missing, of course, the spaces. All I'm doing is correct this output generated by OCR of a whiteboard with handwritten text. Okay, look at the corrections that it has done. So a very, very novel way to even correct OCR, output and make it more accurate for the scenario. Okay, because it just understands the language construct. Here is a way of doing logical reasoning. So I'm saying a junior engineer should certify that the work has been completed and first payment should be made only after that. The advance amount should be covered from the first payment, etc., etc. There is the payment must be calculated by multiplying the rate specified in the SOR and length of the wall build. Assume today is 10th March and the work started on 15th. Advance of 50,000 was made to the vendor on 20th Feb, and the rate is this. Think step by step and give response. This is a way I'm asking it to think logically. How much is the amount due to the vendor for the first payment, and should the amount be paid to the vendor? And it says amount due to the vendor for the first payment is 127 into SOR rate. The payment should not be made to the vendor until the junior engineer has certified the work has been completed and advance amount has been recovered from the first payment. Now, let me go ahead and change the temperature and let me regenerate. Okay, let's do this. Give it a minute. I'll come back to this. Here is a scenario. I have a job description. It says what is required. Required 3 years experience in industry, a bachelor of science in computer science, experiments with containerization, CI/CD, Linux, Unix, etc. And what will be nice to have will be this. Now, as a candidate, I say, okay, I have 6 years of industry experience, a bachelor science in computer science, and experience in building Linux, Unix, dealing with virtualization. What more skills do I need to gain in order to become eligible for this role? And it, lists exactly the script, the skills which I have not provided. It has excluded Linux, Unix, because I say it is, while it is needed, I have that skill. In order to become eligible for this, it says you need require Docker container, Kubernetes orchestration, CI/CD, AWS, Azure, etc. And then if I said also create a learning plan for me with links to online content, it's actually done that. Now, the reason I'm showing you this is you have to think of how you're going to use it in your platform. In another place, we actually did a live demo based on a question that came that, hey, I normally, user is asking the question to the bot or the agent, virtual agent, and bot is only responding. I want bot to be asking questions because I want this to be assessment bot, and user or the end user to be responding. It could be for students, basically learning platform, assessment, etc. And all we had to do to demonstrate that was actually defining that system message or the for persona and what it is supposed to do as that, hey, you are a bot, you're a skill assessment bot, which you can do here, for example, right here, system message. This is a chat studio. In this, I said, okay, you're a skill assessment bot. Your job is to assess on technology skills. You start by saying what, name one skill that you want us to test you on. Ask only one question at a time. Give based on users' response. Increase the level of difficulty in the subsequent question. Do not give answers, even if that, let's say, user request for the response saying you do not know, you do not ever give response. You can make him learn together with you, but you'd never give answers. Okay. When I did that, and it was really doing very well, almost 70-80% of the scenarios it did fab. And given that I've not really built anything from ground up for this, it does well. So think of scenarios that you can solve or you want to solve, and you can really change the game. Going back and showing you this, let's see what answer it gives in this case. Okay, it's not in a mood to change the response. All right, now the last one that I wanted to show you. Okay, here also, so this is chat, right? In this case, there is a pre-built scenario that I picked up, Xbox. And even in this, you can actually you cannot do fine tuning for the chat, but you can do few shots. So you can specify user and assistant response. If user asks how much is PS4, let's say, if this was the kind of question, this is the kind of response, you can add more examples, few shots. Now, I went ahead and just started this. My controller is not working. It said, I'm sorry to hear that your controller is not working. It gave the response. Now I say, okay, tell me Sony PlayStation price. Okay. I apologize, but as an Xbox customer support agent, I'm not supposed to have information, or I cannot give that. So that is how you can steer your conversation. This one is an example of basically, so I told you there's zero shot, there's a few shot, and then there is fine tuning. But in a lot of scenarios, so fine tuning really not required for a lot of scenarios. You can really do with a few shots. But if your documents basically, how are you providing the input? You have to provide the document as context. But given there are limits on the size of tokens for a specific model, you can't really send, let's say, if I was looking to summarize 20-page or 40-page document, right? I can't really do that. So what you can then do in that case is you can build your knowledge base as part of some search index or anything. And then you can define the persona that have Q&A only on top of this data, do not say anything else. And when you do that, basically, you're using the language construct from the foundational model, but it is responding on top of your data without doing any fine tuning, without giving large context to number of huge document being sent as context. So let's go ahead, and this is again a scenario which is applicable across you could have that knowledge base, if not for enterprise, but even when you're building a platform for your intended audience, right? Let's say building a platform for market research itself for different domains. You have certain repository of documents. You actually give capability to your users to do market research. It could be as well be that scenario. So let's say in this case, it is the repository is healthcare plans for employees. Now I go and say, is eye test covered in this? Okay. And okay, could not find anything specifically. Let me ask that again. Does my plan cover test?
Hey, Shweta, quick one. While we are
Yeah.
waiting for that to come up, we've got a couple of questions in the chat and we are at the top of the
Let's-
clock. So ready
Sure.
when you are for the Q&A as well.
Yeah, sure. We can get to that. In fact, I have a hard stop in another 5 minutes. So let me quickly look at the chat. Stop sharing. Sorry.
Okay, so I'll just quickly go over a couple of questions then.
Yeah.
1 second. All right, so Sindhu wants to know what is the minimum sample of data points one may need for this? And she's also said, I collect details about extracurricular activities. So I think she means from an edtech perspective. How can I make the most of this? Maybe if you want to talk about the use case for edtech, and we can take it from there.
Use case for a tech. Sorry, I didn't get that.
Edtech.
EdTech, like I said, right? You could have it you could generate quizzes for the people. You could have a Q&A on the knowledge base. You can have translations. You can create learning plans. I would say the opportunity in EdTech is immense for this kind of technology. I've seen different startups and customers using it for education space.
Another question is from Rati, who wants to know, is this tool free to use for startups? How can this be used to develop an MVP for a startup if the founder is a non-tech person and is struggling to build a good tech team?
So while the studio is fairly easy to get started, as you saw, right, you're writing English language instructions, and that's what is really the core of this particular technology. How good you can give instruction as language or the prompts, that's one piece. So you really don't require a development team to validate the idea, but eventually to build it, yes, you will require. And to answer your question, whether it is free or not, I think as if you sign up for Microsoft for Startup, and Rahul and Annie can probably talk about that, you do get certain amount of credits, and which you can use for using this service as well.
All right. There's another question from Vikas. So what parameters do you track for abuse monitoring? If I train an algorithm for AI generated voice, that's human sounding voice, could you tell me how I can monitor the abuse using Azure?
So this particular service, the abuse content the kind of content we are monitoring for abuse is hate, self-harm, any kind of sexual content or racy content. Those are the broad categories. We do have now a service which we have recently launched for being used as for your own models. We call it Azure Content Safety. That is all about providing this capability to be integrated in your own platforms. Like if you have a model that you have trained, you can use content safety for monitoring that for abuse.
All right. Also, a couple of students wanted to know if there are specific student discounts also available that they can avail of.
So I will let Rahul and Annie to take that up after we're done with the tech and the
Okay. All right. So I think that pretty much covers most of the questions. And you said you had a hard stop. If there are any thoughts that you have to kind of close it all in, and then we can.
So my request would be, get access to the platform. And for that, one is enroll into Founders Hub, because we do not give access to this service unless we know who are the, who is building for this. And the sole reason for that is our very strong belief in building, using the technology responsibly, ethically. And if we do not know who's using it, we would not know how it is being used. So one, we should know who's the customer or who's the person building it. Second, you have to share your use case, and then it gets vetted for responsible AI usage, and then you get access. So that's the first step. So, enroll in Microsoft for Startup, get access to the service. Once you have access to the service, of course, you already know the domain that you work on. What is your startup, right? Look at how you can actually, there are two ways. One, you can look at, hey, what can I solve using this technology? The other is definitely more powerful, which is, given I have this, platform, your platform, can I really use this for changing the experience for my, users? Other is, of course, other would be, what can I solve using this, which is not a very powerful way. So always think from your users, your user persona perspective. I'm sure there are multiple, use cases that can be built. Think what would be that will give you ROI, give your user the best, really the experience will change for the user and will bring in the adoption to your platform. So those would be the two things. And of course, network with the community in this space, very, very strong. We do support multiple communities as well. So be present in those communities to learn more about, how different startups are building using this.
All right. Thank you so much, Shweta. For everyone who's dialed in, thank you so much for joining. Just to summarize, I think like Shweta mentioned, with great power comes great responsibility. So we have to adhere to the community guidelines that they have available. We will be having a lot more sessions coming up tomorrow at 2 and again tomorrow at 4 as well. So looking forward to seeing all of you there. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you all. Thanks so much, Shloka. Bye-bye.